Hey everybody, Adam Bentley here, and today I wanted to talk about the GGD update that was recently released, which includes the drum samples of the P3 Select Difficulty drum set. And I was just gonna jump right in and discuss what I like to do to process these samples to get them to sound the way I want in my mixes. So hopefully along the way there's some things that people will learn from or use in their own mixes, and I'll just start off with the mix of the drums that I have separate from the track. If you haven't heard the track, I'll put a link in the description. It's just a quick mix that I made to showcase these new drums and what they're capable of. So I stripped the guitars and bass and stuff off. So here's the drum mix. Cool. So I'll go ahead and immediately play the raw samples when you just load up the P3 kit. And by the way, since this is open, I have all the P3 kit elements chosen except for the China, which is just, I preferred the timbre of the traditional 20-inch, I believe is what it is. Essentially, this is the whole P3 kit that comes with the update. I'll just go right into it here and build up a mix in the direction of that original process mix you heard. And since I'm kind of just diving in and going for it, it's not going to be an exact like carbon copy mix, because I feel that every time I jump into a mix, it'll end up slightly different. So with that being said, let's just start from the beginning and get some levels going inside the contact mixer. I tend not to use much of the far room in general, just because if I'm going for a tight and punchy mix, it's a balance thing, because room really brings your drums to life, but it can also be something that makes it very cloudy if there's too much. So toms, snare, I like a roomy snare. It gives it a huge sense of space, so it's a little different of an approach there. But kick, that room's gone. Near room, mostly gone, a little bit of overhead. And we'll just go with that. Cymbal levels, I just remembered I liked that the splash was really up. I like the sound of the splash. So I brought up this close mic level. I didn't really touch the advanced cymbal matrix here, but it is an awesome feature. And if you want to get very particular about your cymbal balances, dive right in. It's pretty endless what you can achieve as far as like your kit balance and whatnot. So now to the routing. I do multi-out, but I tend to group things so that I have as little tracks as possible in the DAW. So I think it comes out to 6. I'm gonna have the kick on 1, snare on 2, toms on 3, the close mics of the cymbals on 4, overheads on 5, and all rooms are on 6. So I'll just do that really quick. Alright, so I'm going to click in my extra tracks. This is how you do it in Studio One, right in the bottom left corner. So now I have multi-outs, and as you can see in the mixer, I already have a drum kit, reverb, and comp, which is parallel compression, all set up, so we can just expedite this process a bit. Cool, they are all summed to the drum kit bus. Forgot that I need to pan these real quick. So I'm just going to work my way left to right, ultimately to the drum kit processing, then effects processing, or aux processing. Starting with the kick. You guessed it, metric halo. Never fails on the drums to get that really aggressive attack. And I know there's a lot of compressors out there. They all do great jobs, but this is just my preference. All right. Then I'll get a EQ. And that's basically that. There's just some little areas I wanted to accentuate and get rid of. And there's nothing to it except just sweeping through and using your ears. Snare drum now. Cool. So we're just getting some smack out of these close mics here. I'm going to go ahead and bring down the snare bottom in this mixer just a little. About 3 dB or so. Toms. I just do pretty basic EQ. I'm gonna probably just loop a spot. I don't have many toms hits. Those cuts may seem like a lot, but if you look at the grid, it's only 3 dB. I'm not doing anything crazy here. The toms sound really good, and the tuning's really good, so it doesn't demand that much. The spots on this kit, I've noticed, are a little bit louder than the other kit, so I tend to attenuate that. And also, some of those cymbals have a little more low end. I'll just get rid of that, some proximity effect. For overheads, it's just 2 things that I'm looking for. One is kind of evening out the difference in level between the snare drum and the rest of the kit, and then just getting some of that low end out, just to make the overall kit feel a little tighter. Rooms is a similar principle, but the compression I like to get a little more extreme. It's a similar character, like parallel compression in my opinion, where you just have the room feel a little more excited, aggravated. I don't know what the word is. With the attack, a real quick note. I like to basically not let transients through the room come out of the room track. And in the overheads, I like to let a little bit out. I don't like to choke that completely, because there still is some valuable transient detail you can get out of the overheads. They're not that far away from the drum kit. The rooms, I feel like, are more just really filling it out, just taking it to a whole new level. So I'll just take the whole kit and send it through an API. And if you'll notice, I didn't really do much fader balancing. These drums come out with a pretty awesome balance, so kick and snare being balanced really well is like a big one that I noticed. But anyways, yeah, I have the API 2500 just moving slightly, being moved by the kick and snare a little bit. I feel like it just adds this little glue to the whole kit. So EQ, I'll just leave it alone until I guess I can compare it to the other mix. I'm assuming it'll be a little bit brighter in the final mix. So like a high shelf might be the most I will do. I do like to run drums through a J37, the tape emulator sometimes. I feel like it just does a nice smoothing out of these transients, especially when they get like too, for lack of a better word, like digital sounding. And yeah, it just subtly affects the transients and the spectrum and even the wideness a little bit. It feels a little wider. I'm going to go ahead and just throw in that high shelf that I mentioned, because why not? You can always take it away. Cool. So here is the drum kit without these three things. With it's subtle, but I feel like it does refine the kit, make it sound a little more polished. So on to my effects sends, my reverb and my comp. The parallel compression has a limiter that chokes the snare to kind of even it out with the rest of the stuff that's sending into this compressor. And the reason why is just because I like to have the intensity of that amount of send. Like, so if I send the snare a lot and it attenuates it a lot, you'd think, why not just fix your gain staging and just make it be more of an even level of send, like with the rooms and the overheads or whatever you send. And I just like the timbre of that intensity, but I don't want that level. I don't want the compressor to be dropping like 10 dB on the snare and then like barely acting on anything else. So that's basically the philosophy there. So I can go ahead and start sending things to the parallel compressor, and then I will explain the other things, the actual compressor and the EQ in there. Rooms and snare will have the most for sure, and tom's just a little. So I have an EQ right after the limiter because sometimes in certain mixes I may want to take out the low end before it hits the parallel compressor, or just things such as, in general I feel that this parallel compression bus needs to be at a certain level to get that sort of attitude I want, but it brings up with it these frequencies that I don't like, so you can do some attenuation there. So don't be afraid to do things like that with your parallel compression. Ratio 8, I guess, is what I went with. No attack. The fastest release opens up, it gets that really cool, like excited room sound that way. So I was not kidding when I said that thing attenuates that snare. But the compressor at the end of the chain here acts a little bit more evenly, like relatively more evenly on everything, which gets that excited, pumpy effect that I like. And then I just blend it in. Cool. And then we have reverb, which is, I'll get rid of that limiter for a second. Just true verb. I don't even know when I loaded up. I think it's like drum room. And then decay time is not very, it's just like 1 second most. It's just like adding a whole nother room sound, like in an attempt to get even more dimension to it. So I tend to send, I send the snare toms a little bit. Let's just start with the stock level of sending, which is -6 in this DAW. Already hearing a low end that I do not need in this mix. Cool. So let's go back to the original drum mix we had before we get too carried away. Cool. So there is a level difference there. I can attenuate that. So that kick, when it gets sent to the parallel compressor, does have a elongated low end response. So I could cut some of that out. So at this point, there's really no direction. It's more of an improvised motion here, where I'm just going to be listening, and I become alert to certain things, like maybe the amount that I send to the Aux Sends, or just frequency responses of the different tracks. And then I'd like to just blend in this no drums track I have here, which is the guitars and bass, see how it fits with that, and then I make adjustments based on that. So if you're wondering why I have a limiter on the reverb, it's because of the same principles as the parallel compression. It's just something I've been experimenting with. I want the overall reverb's contribution to the mix to be like flattened out. So if the limiter is grabbing that snare, then there'll be more of an even amount of signal, like just actual like volume going into the reverb. So let's start this from the beginning with my drumless track and the current mix that we're at. that is basically it as far as my approach. So I hope this was helpful, and you guys definitely have to check out this update. It is so worth it, and these samples are just really killer. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll check you all later.